A common dynamic often seen in relationships and interactions with narcissistic people is that you're held responsible for their moods and their behaviours. You're told what you need to do in order to make their lives better or easier. They can sulk whenever you say no or you set a boundary because, well, it's so unfair. And yet, they'll tell you to grow up whenever you have a problem. Or if you're facing some kind of difficulty of your own, they might tell you to sort that out yourself. It's got nothing to do with them. Even if you share your thoughts, well, you might be told you're stupid, you don't know anything about that. In fact, you shouldn't even be making decisions without consulting them first because you're not capable. So on one hand, you're treated like a child whenever you try to assert yourself. On the other hand, you're treated like a responsible adult whenever they want something or they're in some kind of distress. And this can be very confusing and destabilizing. It can have people feeling guilty, confused, and overly responsible. Because one minute, you're the person who has to rescue them, reassure them, sort out their self-inflicted crises. The next, you're being lectured on why you shouldn't have ideas or goals, certainly without seeking for their approval first. So what's going on there? Why do they do this? Well, people with deeply ingrained narcissistic traits often engage in what's known as parentification and infantilization. And sometimes this can shift back and forward depending on what they want at that particular moment. Other times, it can shift back and forward several times in the one conversation depending on how they're feeling. But to illustrate this, parentification, well, that could be giving other people, such as their friends, partners, work colleagues, even their own children, giving other people responsibilities for them. For instance, this could be emotional support or giving them constant praise and encouragement, mediating or resolving their conflicts and their problems. Generally, just doing things to make their lives run smoothly. In some cases, they'll even burden other people with tasks that they're more than capable of doing themselves. So they make someone else their parent, their caregiver. Infantilizing, however, well, this involves treating those same people as helpless, clueless, incompetent, and less capable than they really are, regardless of their age. For instance, they can micromanage decisions, second guess, and criticize your judgment, but often while claiming it's for your own good because they know what's best. So some common examples and motivations behind this behaviour can include, first of all, because it helps them to maintain power and control. Because narcissists, well, they generally view the people around them as extensions of themselves rather than as autonomous individuals. So the parentification allows them to offload their responsibilities onto others. For instance, a narcissistic parent might make their child act as their therapist, their confidant, or their problem solver. Or they might make their partners responsible for their actions. For instance, if they're caught out being up to no good, they might claim it was the partner who made them do it because of something the partner did, said, or maybe neglected to do. It's like the partner was supposed to prevent that bad thing happening. If I put it to you this way, it's like they wet the bed and they'll either blame the blanket or they will blame the partner for not telling them to go to the bathroom first. The infantilization, on the other hand, well, that undermines the other person's confidence by treating them as if they're incapable. And over time, this can condition people to be so desperate for approval, they might even doubt their own abilities and their own decision making. And it can also create a dependence on the narcissist. So that person is caught in a push-pull situation where they're burdened like an adult and yet they're restricted like a child at the same time. And that's a very small, tight little area to try to operate from. Secondly, narcissistic people require constant affirmation. In many cases, they've received inconsistent parenting themselves. So, through parentification, they receive the emotional nurturing they lacked in their own childhood. They get validation, praise, reassurance. They even get someone to handle their moods for them. The infantilization, however, well, that can paint the narcissist as an indispensable hero in your story. They want you, in fact, they need you to need them. So they try to elicit dependence, admiration, even gratitude, to try to stave off their own fears of inadequacy or abandonment. So they parentify others to receive the care that they crave, while infantilizing them to try to control the ways they get it. Another example of how these dynamics show up could be how your talents, your skills, your abilities, even your social network might not only be appealing or attractive to them, but they're actually demanded to help and support them. For instance, maybe you have a friend who is an accountant. That is someone who can help them with their finances. Or maybe you have good organizational skills. Well, you can sort their messy lives out. However, if you accomplish something for yourself, or maybe you do something for someone else, well, it's met with disapproval, criticism, or contempt. Because whatever it is, it's only good whenever it serves them, it's for their benefit. If it's not for their benefit, then it could be seen as an act of betrayal. It could be seen as a threat to their sense of entitlement, their need for control, and their sense of superiority. Moving on, you might be expected to be their servant, their therapist, even their cheerleader. They expect you to absorb and manage their moods, their anxieties. And you have to listen to their never-ending list of problems and complaints over and over again. And they demand that you reassure them, collude with them, even sometimes be their emotional punching bag. And yet, your problems are irrelevant. They are nothing to do with them. You have to sort yourself out. You might be told you're too sensitive, too flawed, or you just need to grow up. You might even be told that you're just being selfish. No matter what it is you're struggling with, it's not as bad as what they have to go through. Because any time you spend worrying about your own problems means you're not paying attention to them. So basically, you have to be the parent to their inner child, while your inner child is left abandoned, left to fend for themselves. Next, they can interfere with, even try to micromanage your life choices, whether that's your career, who you associate with, even what kind of car you should drive. But they will usually do it under the excuse of knowing what's best for you. And anything you might do without checking with them first, even if you suggest something that doesn't meet with their approval, as I said earlier, it could be treated like a personal betrayal. They don't want you doing anything without their approval, and yet they expect you to have all the answers and all the solutions to their problems and to fix things for them. Finally, there are what are often recurring themes throughout a lot of narcissistic behaviours, and that is double standards. You're expected to sort out the messes that they create while at the same time being treated like you're unreliable and you can't be trusted. Their expectations must always be met, their boundaries must always be respected, whereas your expectations are stupid, unrealistic, and your boundaries are just selfish. If you text them, well, they'll get back to you whenever it suits them. However, you must be available to them 24 hours a day. And if you ever want to raise an issue with them, well, they don't want to talk about it right now. However, they might demand instant answers from you. They might even interrogate you to get them. So what you often find is the role flips depending on their mood, their whims, the contents of their head, or whatever it is they want from you at a given moment. And this can keep people constantly off balance, never sure which version of themselves is the right one to show up. And the constant role shifting can be very destabilizing for people. They infantilize people to keep them weak, close, and dependent on them, but they also parentify them to get their needs met. And dynamics like this can cause a lot more than just stress, because that constant flipping between being the caregiver and the child, well, people can lose track of themselves, and this can lead to anxiety, depression, and a constant nagging feeling of guilt. Also, long-term exposure to this kind of behaviour can lead people to people-pleasing behaviours in other relationships and in other situations, as people start to believe that their value only really comes from what they can do for others, that other people's moods, feelings are more important than their own. And in many cases, people who were led to believe they can't trust themselves might find it hard to make decisions. They can even question whether or not their own basic needs are just being selfish. So, if any of this sounds familiar, well, just acknowledge that what you've been through is an unhealthy, I'd even say an unmanageable dynamic. But also remember, the constant demand to be both the child and the parent was never really about you. It was about their needs, their issues, and their inability to manage their own lives. It's all to serve their own psychological needs and to keep their fragile sense of self intact. and it stems from their own deep-seated insecurities, their need for control, and this constant need for a narcissistic supply, things like validation, admiration, and dominance. And this need is often rooted in their own unresolved childhood trauma or even attachment issues. Sadly, due to their lack of empathy to a narcissist, well, your identity, your sanity, well, that just became collateral damage. Now, I would like to remind you at this point that the majority of my content, in particular my live streams, well, they're all topics that are requested by you, the audience. So, if you're interested in untangling yourself from this unhealthy dynamic, looking at ways to expunge those feelings of guilt and responsibility, then let me know in the comments section. I'll put something together for you. I'm Darren Magee, and if you find this topic to be helpful, please consider subscribing to my channel, and until next time, thanks for watching.